I found the gum.
You didn't call Hannah, did you? Because you're A.
Congratulations, Spencer. You figured it out.
This is CNN Breaking News.
The United States Supreme Court is getting ready to give the majority opinion regarding the very controversial Dred Scott v. Sanford case, which will decide whether or not Dred Scott and his family will be granted their freedom. Dred Scott is an African-American slave who was owned by John Emerson, a doctor serving the United States Army. Originally, Dred Scott and his family lived with his owner in Missouri, a state where slavery is legal. The Scott family and their owner then went to live in the free state of Wisconsin. After 4 years of living in Wisconsin, the Scotts and their owner moved back to Missouri in 1842. A year after arriving back in Missouri, Dr. Emerson passed away and his wife, Irene Emerson, took over his estate. After Dr. Emerson's death, Dred Scott offered to buy his freedom, but Irene Emerson refused. In 1846, after being refused the ability to purchase his freedom, Dred Scott filed a lawsuit against Irene Emerson. The case was tried in 1847, and the judge ruled against Dred Scott. Later evidence of hearsay caused the judge to call for a retrial of the case, and in 1850, a Missouri court ruled that Dred Scott and his family should be granted their freedom because they were illegally kept as slaves while living in Wisconsin. This decision was appealed by Irene Emerson, and the case moved on to the Missouri Supreme Court. In 1852, the Missouri Supreme Court overruled the verdict and claimed, and I quote, "Times now are not as they were when the previous decisions on this subject were made." The Scott family was returned to Irene Emerson. After Dr. Emerson had died, under Missouri law at the time, powers of the Emerson estate were transferred to his wife's brother, John F. A. Sanford. Sanford is a citizen of New York, and because of this, Scott's lawyers claim the case should be brought to federal court because of diverse citizenship. The Scotts then filed the lawsuit in federal court. Once again, they ruled against Dred Scott in federal district court. They appealed to the United States Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court will determine 3 decisions during the trial. The first being whether or not Scott was a U.S. citizen and had the right to sue, the second deciding whether living in a free territory automatically made Scott a free man, and the last, does Congress have the right to outlaw slavery in any territory? Chief Justice Roger B. Taney has delivered the majority opinion. The court has ruled 7-2 against Dred Scott. They have ruled that any person descended from Africans, whether slave or free, is not a citizen of the United States, according to the Constitution. They have also ruled that the Ordinance of 1787 could not confer either freedom or citizenship within the Northwest Territory to non-white individuals. And finally, they have ruled that the provisions of the Missouri Compromise are unconstitutional, since the act exceeds Congress's power. Congress cannot legally outlaw slavery in any territory. You can infer that this decision will have northern states second-guessing their standing on slavery. Thus, Dred Scott, although born in the United States, is not a citizen. He is property, and non-citizens do not have the ability to file suit in federal court. Dred Scott and his family will return as slaves to Irene Emerson's possession. Only minutes after the Supreme Court made their decision, Twitter is already blowing up with tweets about people's reaction to the ruling. This concludes our breaking news report. Stay tuned this week for news pertaining to the country's reaction to this decision. Now back to your program.